Hello, everyone. This is Jackie Martin with A Matter of Motivation with another pop-up positivity interview. I'm so excited to welcome my guest, Christine Roberts. Christine and I met a while ago. We have a common friend, John Maxwell. And actually, she has now parlayed all of her experience. I can't wait for you to hear about it, into being a life coach, an author, and a speaker. And so I'm so glad to welcome Christine. Hi, Christine. Tell us a
Hi,
little bit more
Jackie.
about you and share with our folks a little bit about your background.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm from Rochester, New York originally. I grew up near Canada. Lived in a house built in 1810 and grew up in the snow and the cold and grew up in a pretty dysfunctional environment with, alcoholism, domestic violence, and
Oh, my.
sexual abuse. I know it's kind of heavy, but the reason I share that is because that's really a big part of my story. And, that is some things that you can look at negative or positive. I have grown and learned so much because of a lot of those challenges. And I have been a student of personal development, like since my early 20s, and moved to Atlanta in 1989. I don't even know if I want to say how long ago that was, but moved.
Practically a native. Practically a native.
Yes, yes. And so I came down here with a Nissan Sentra with no air conditioning, $700. And I started in sales, selling copiers and paper shredders and fax machines. And that was really when I started listening to, Dennis Waitley, The Psychology of Winning, and Tony Robbins and Dr. Vincent Peale and Zig Ziglar and all of these different people. And, just really started that journey of trying to improve myself. And so in the corporate world, I did well and set lots of goals. I've always been a very goal-oriented person, and actually lived in California for a couple of years with a company. I got a promotion out there to La Jolla, California, oversaw an account for the country, traveled crazy, had no life. I was single at the time. And it was one of those where I said, if I keep doing this, I'm never going to meet anybody. So I ended up getting another job, getting transferred back to Atlanta, met my husband 2 weeks later, and we got married. We have two children that are 14 and 16. I have a 16-year-old son and a 14-year-old daughter. And so through my journey of I started speaking years ago, and I wrote a book called Inspirational Mind Food. And, on the side, in addition to my corporate world, I was doing those things, and then ended up meeting the president of John Maxwell Company. And we got talking, and he said, would you ever want, if we had an opportunity, would you ever want to work with us here? And I said, absolutely, you're my people. So I worked there at the John Maxwell Company as a senior leadership consultant for several years. And then we traveled America, which I know we'll talk about that a little bit. Ended up back in Atlanta, and most recently worked with Disney in their advisory group. So I worked with companies, taking the Disney approach to culture, employee engagement, and leadership, and working with companies to apply those principles in their business. And so that's what I did most recently. In October, I've started my own company, and I'm pursuing that, calling on, working with and partnering with ambitious working moms to go from busy to balanced. Although when you say balanced, it doesn't mean that everything's going to be in balance. So anyway, that's what I'm doing now. And
Love that. Love that. Well, but busy to balanced. Oh my gosh. And it today, in today's environment, wow, have things ever changed? And so all the more reason people need what you do to help, especially since sort of the definition of working and even all the things that we have to do as a mom now have shifted. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Crazy. Well, so I want to hear about all the busy things you're doing that are helping other women too. But before we start in to what you're working on right now, I want you to tell, because I was so impressed with this a few years ago, when you packed up your family and got into an RV and decided to spend that year traveling the US. Can you just tell us in a nutshell what made you decide, and what did you learn the most from that experience?
Yes, yes. Well, what happened, what inspired the whole thing was I had met a couple that had done that. I was at a speaker conference in California, and I met a couple that had done exactly that. They lived in DC, and the thing that motivated them, though, inspired them, was the mom was sick, and they were concerned about her mortality, actually. And fortunately, she got better and she's doing great. But that was kind of what triggered it. A lot of times we wait for things like the diagnosis before we have the guts to do something. And when I met them, it just really inspired me to think about wanting to travel with my family. And the other thing, my husband and I went to an event at our church called Cultural Current, and it was all about how in our culture we can get caught up in all of the things that, running around over scheduled, working all the time, really not connecting with our families, or just going. And that really impacted me at the time, because not long after that, so when I had these different things happen, it just triggered me. And I don't know, in my heart, I felt like I want to do this with our kids when they're 10 and 12. And at the time they were like 8 and 10. And so I presented that to my husband, who is an engineer, and he was not on board at all. I mean, he was not on board.
A little too out of the box for an engineer, maybe at
Yeah.
first.
I mean, I'm like the visionary, like person, and the more risk taker. He's very, so my biggest sales job was selling him on doing this. I asked him what all of his concerns were, and I created a spreadsheet with all of his objections, and what the criteria was, and the, like how to overcome those objections and resources. I mean, it did this whole thing. And so it was one of these situations where in our lives, we live in a beautiful neighborhood. We drive nice cars. On paper, we had everything, the big fancy house, the fancy cars, all the stuff. But life just felt like such a grind. And I just said, and the final clincher of this was, I read an article about people in hospice, and they asked people, if you could live your life over again, what would you do different? And regret was always what people didn't do. Why didn't I just go travel for a year? Why didn't I say I was sorry? Why didn't I just go for that new job because I was miserable? Like, this is it. This is life. And I told my husband, the poor guy, he really didn't have any choice. I said, look, I will not be on my deathbed and have regrets. We have a window this big with our kids to do something like this. And, I'm going to, we're doing it. So he got on board. We literally sold our house. I mean, from the time we decided we were doing it, it was 4-month period. So a lot of people plan this forever, they take years to plan this. We actually sold our house in 3 days. We gave away, and so we sold some of our stuff. We gave away a lot of our stuff. We sold our cars. We bought a 38-foot RV and a Jeep, and we took off. We were actually cast on a TV show called Going RV, and that's still on. I see it all. It's so funny because once in a while,
what channel is it on?
For RVs. But it was the best thing. And it's so funny. And the, one of the things that I share with people is, on my tagline for my business is create your best life. Especially here in America, right? Death and taxes. That's the only thing for certain. Other than that, we can create our best life. You got to have the guts to do it. Now, you don't have to necessarily sell all your stuff and go travel in an RV, but I know that there was some people that I didn't even really know well that, I shared this stuff with them, that we were doing this and saying, there's a scripture. It says, do not conform to the ways of this world. And it's to me, I said, I just think about my kids' soccer and, they're athletic. So then, you get all this pressure to like, oh, they got to be in the academy, and oh, they're 10 years old. We have practices 3 days a week. Oh, and they're going to be traveling on the weekends. And it's like, we don't have any family time, because you can get caught up in this cultural current and feel like you have to do these things. And I'm like, no, we don't. And so, yeah, anyway.
You did well. I love the phrase you just came up with to share with cultural current. And I do feel like sometimes we feel like we are, there is pressure to jump in. And if my child doesn't start soccer at 4 when everybody else starts at 4, when later when they're 6 or 8, maybe they won't be as, they won't have an advantage. And so we start this pressure and it goes very early.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like, and this is just, I'm just curious because of the background perhaps that you've come from, how, if at all, has that impacted all of this sort of revelation as to, wow, look, life goes fast, I need to do something different, this cultural current can't sweep me away? Well, how, if any way, has
Yeah.
that impacted?
Oh my gosh, so much. I mean, for any of your audience that's watching this, I mean, we're all broken people, right? It's just a matter of to what extent. And it's a matter of what we do about it. So as a parent, there's a saying that says, I can't change my ancestors. I can't change my ancestors, but I can change me and be a better me so I positively impact my descendants. My kids, being the best parent possible and I mean, for every parent, we all want to be the best parent possible. But, one thing I know is that it all starts with me. Our children come into this world as a clean slate. They are perfect little beings, and everything about their emotional needs, their behaviors, it comes back to me, and it comes back to every parent to fix themselves, because when we don't fix ourselves, we continue the dysfunction. Now, listen, there's tons of great qualities I've inherited from my family, which I'm thankful for. However, I know there's things that were not right. And I think all of us can, connect with that at some level. Our parents all did the best they could. And now it's up to me to do the best I can and really look in the mirror and figure out, if my kids aren't acting a certain way, what do I need to do different? How can I connect with them differently? One of the things I think is so great working in the personal development world and leadership is I've taken so many principles from my corporate experience in leadership and culture, and I apply that in my family. And so, it really has made such a big difference, traveling with our kids. When somebody said to me, we have one opportunity to raise a quality human being. And
Wow,
as,
nice.
yeah. And so, I mean, as an ambitious career woman, I love being a businesswoman, and I think that a lot of people, we can let our work define us, and we can think that that's always so important, and we are busy, 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 and our kids are going to be gone like that. And you can't go back in time. Like, when our kids need us, they need our attention. And so it's really just that it's really just trying to, be that responsible person. Obviously, we have to work, we have to bring in money, but at the same time, recognizing that these relationships with our children are so important. And, like Andy Stanley, our pastor, talks about, I want our kids to want to hang out with us when they don't have to. And that is really a driving force and an underlying, principle that we think about.
Well,
So.
it sounds like you have, and I love the fact that you're seeing. I mean, as women, men too, but I think women have an interesting, unique role often in the families. But what we're trying to sort of pull together, what in some areas seems separate. Here I am at work, here I am at home, when in fact it's just one you. and that being a whole person that can be there for your kids and can be there for your team members and for your workplace is an important sort of balance to strike. Wouldn't you agree? Because you're working primarily with ambitious working women, I love that term, who are probably struggling. Many, either they're doing it not so well, or they feel like they're struggling, or they're feeling guilty about one place or another. I mean, how do you start with somebody who's sort of in that mode, helping them to build relationships that make those kids want to be a part of your lives always?
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, what I always go back to, there's a lot of different components when it comes to boundaries. Really the struggles that I've listened from other women is we have fear of failure, we have perfectionism, we have those negative plaguing thoughts, like what you're describing. What you're in one place you feel bad, you're in another place you feel like you're failing, like you're not doing it right. And I mean, it's not easy. It's really not easy. And it comes back to our thinking. And so much, everything about life and our quality of life, whether it's great, average, or terrible, is how we think about things. It's that mindset piece. And, I feel one thing that's really, I've been passionate about this for years, is raising awareness to thought. And there's a saying, and I think you've probably heard that, I'm sure you've heard the saying, belief drives behavior. Belief drives behavior. Well, what do you believe? What you believe is what you feed your mind. Just like our bodies, to have a healthy body, we eat healthy food, we drink plenty of water, we exercise. It's like when we're feeding our bodies good stuff, we have healthy bodies. Same thing for our minds and our spirits. And how we think, drives how we feel. Because you can't be sad or negative without a thought first. There's a thought that causes you to feel a certain way. And then our feelings will drive our results or our behaviors. And so the root of everything is managing our thinking. And tied into that is, setting boundaries, having a good attitude about things, focusing on the good things and the blessings in our lives, because we're inundated in our culture. I mean, because I'm so into all this stuff, all this psychology and everything, we are downloaded with so much negative messaging and stuff. People are desensitized to it. And, when you think about anxiety and depression and all of these different things and negative thoughts and, just stress and everything, it all relates to what's going on in our minds. But it's not easy. I mean, it is a lot of work to be intentional about what we feed our minds. But it's just like with food. If you have a really clean diet, if somebody has a really clean diet and then they go eat a Big Mac at McDonald's, they feel horrible. Like they can tell the difference so radically. It's the same thing with our thinking. When we are listening to music that's positive, inspiring words and lyrics, and if we're going to watch TV, watching things, I mean, look at television, liar, liar, mistresses, deceitful, like it's like so much ugliness, but people don't even realize it. And it affects us at a subconscious level, whether we realize it or not. And so that's where it all begins. That's like the root of everything. I know that's a long drawn out answer.
No, that's beautiful because, I mean, we're here when we call this pop-up positivity because really, I think positivity or negativity is a choice. And that intention you were just talking about sometimes takes a little practice. And especially when we're in an environment we are in right now, where some of the imagined fears are real. I mean, people really are concerned about things. Can you give us one tip on how people can follow up on that intention to stay positive?
Yeah. So something that I've done is, it's called the no complaint contract. And And it's part of my coaching program, but it's something that you don't have to have the formal thing. You can just do this. And so it's raising awareness to your thinking. So no complaints for 30 days. And I've done this numerous times. I've done this with my mastermind group. But what's interesting is it's like like I'm like the total Pollyanna. So I know I'm way over here on the spectrum. And I did this no complaint contract. And I realized there's so many times that I want to complain. And I didn't even realize it. But it's kind of like doing a food diary. Like people say, oh, I don't eat anything, and then if they pay attention, it's like, oh yeah, they ate ice cream or they, like whatever. But I was like a great example of this. I was in Chicago at the airport, and I'm there in the morning, I'm in line, and I'm doing this no complaint contract. I'm in line, and the guy in front of me is hemming and hawing. He's like, and you can just sense his negative energy. And we're in the security line, and it's moving fine. Like I'm in a good mood, and I'm going, oh my gosh, like this guy, he seems so agitated. And, like my husband laughs. He's like, you are the only person. I couldn't help myself. I said, hey, so what's your name? Joe. I said, oh, I'm Christine. I chit-chatted with him. And then I said, so Joe, what time's your flight? And he tells me it was like 30 minutes after my flight. So I'm going, okay, well, I thought maybe he was running behind. And I'm trying to figure out, like, why is he so agitated? So I asked him finally, after building some rapport, I said, what's going on? I said, why are you in such a bad mood? And my husband's like, I can't believe you say some of these things. And I don't know, somehow I can get away with it.
Yeah.
But ultimately, he didn't really have any good reason. And I said to him, I go, well, I'm doing this no complaint contract. And I didn't realize how much I complain. Like I caught myself. And needless to say, at the end of our conversation, it was just like raising his awareness. He went 180 from his energy was totally different. And what I draw from that is he didn't even realize that he was being so negative. And that conversation just raised awareness for him to realize that he was just complaining, like he was in a bad mood for no good reason. And so I would just say that for people to really pay attention to their thinking and be intentional about what they feed their minds, like, making sure that you're listening to positive music, turn off the news. Like maybe you should look at that, kind of get one scan, know what's going on, and then just be around people that are positive. I mean, or try to do that, like the no complaint contract. I've done that in situations to kind of try to raise awareness for people, because I don't want to listen to people complain. Nobody does.
I love that. I mean, I love that. And in fact, this week I've been talking to some teams about, and what a great idea with a no complaint contract. But I was even saying at the beginning of a meeting, maybe you give everybody 5 minutes, they can complain or vent. And then, because we know how toxic complaining can be and how super contagious it can be. And so what a great way to bring to light what's happening, maybe even unconsciously.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I have a friend, and this is the way I love to sort of wrap up our time together. I've just so enjoyed this. I have a friend who has shared a comment with, and her name is Nina, and she always asks me whenever there's something maybe I'm complaining about or I'm feeling less than totally positive, she'll throw out the notion or question, what if it's better? What if it's better? So since you are a mindset coach, tell me what comes up for you when you hear that question.
I would say so what to say it one more time?
What if it's better?
What if it's better? Then we would all feel more joy. We would all be kinder. We would all be healthier. We would all be more energized. We would all have better relationships. We would have more connection, more love, more compassion, more grace. I mean, those are, what if all of that was more? I mean, that you can't beat that.
Isn't that the truth? I just really feel like just going there, just in order to even answer the question,
Yeah.
you have to do what you just did, which is list some amazing. I loved your more grace for yourself
Myself.
and for other people, right? So
Yes.
that's kind of the no complaint contract can really help sort of nip that in the bud, because I
Yeah.
think that's where grace is lacking when we complain, right?
Well, giving the benefit of the doubt. That's what I tell people, like giving the benefit of the doubt. You know, that whole thing, like, um, we judge others on their actions, but ourselves on our intentions. Like, it's like, you know, a lot of times people get offended by somebody, they don't mean anything by it, you know? And so it's like giving people the benefit of the doubt and giving grace.
Mm,
And it's just a more, it's like people, you have more peace in your life
yeah.
if you can think like that.
I love that. And I think peace and positivity come hand in hand. I mean, I think it is very difficult. Just like they always say, fear and gratitude can't live in the same space.
Yep.
It's very difficult to feel fear when you're feeling grateful. I think it's very difficult to feel anything but positive when you're focused on those forward thinking and imagining what is better. So
Yeah.
Christine, I have thoroughly enjoyed this. There's
Oh,
so
me
much
too,
more.
Jackie. You're so awesome. We could probably
We could keep
cure the
going and going.
problems of the world.
I love it. Well, promise you'll come back and we'll do some more. I would love to be able to share, but I really would like for you to tell everybody how they could reach you.
Yes, yes. Would love to hear from people. You can go to my website, christinemroberts.com. So all my stuff is Christine M. Roberts, since I have a common name. And on Facebook, if you go to Christine M. Roberts 10, you can find me there. I'm on Instagram and all that. So if you go to my website, that's probably the easiest place.
Okay, wonderful. And so they could sign up there if they wanted to. Do you have groups, or is it coaching or masterminds? What's your
Yeah,
method?
yeah. So I actually am getting ready to launch a new coaching program called Create Your Best Life Mindset Reset. And that is going to launch on June 7th. We've got a webinar that we're doing, a 3-part series called Lead Yourself to Lead Others. And that'll be starting in May. So if you go to the website, you can click on that. And those will be continual type programs. So whoever's listening to this or watching this video, this positivity video, then you can check it out and we'll have ongoing things in the future.
Oh, wow. Christine, I appreciate it so much. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you being here and sharing your story and your journey. And sometime I want to dig into that whole be gone for a year. I love that. Another
Oh,
friend.
there's lots of stuff I could share with you about
Oh
that.
my goodness, that was awesome. I had another friend who did it across the world
Oh,
recently. Oh man, so step 2, then there goes.
yeah. Oh, I'm putting that on my vision board.
I love that. Thank you so much, Christine.
My
And thank
pleasure, Jackie.
Oh, you know what? We're gonna do this again. We're gonna dig even deeper.
Sounds good.
Folks, I thank you so much for being here for another episode of Pop Up Positivity. Remember to check out and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go to Be More Learning, B without the E, BeMoreLearning.com, and subscribe there. I'm just excited that you've been here. Join us for all the rest of them. This is Jackie Martin with A Matter of Motivation and Be More Learning. Have a great day.